Hi, how are you? I'm John Solo. You're not. You all know the drill there. Welcome to Storytime today with, I just love this gal, Morticia Knight. She's a friend, and we have been working on this series for quite a little while. This one is the Command and Care series, Book 5, and this is Diva Pop. Now, there's a couple particular things about this. Sorry, I'm going to flip up the cover. There we go. These can be read completely independently. The characters don't connect from one story to the next, so each one is an independent story. You can start at any time in here. This one in particular is a lot of fun. I think you're going to like it quite a bit.
Paying us.
I'm going to read you the summary here so you can get an idea what it's all about. I know I get to play a diva in it, and it's fun. Recipe for disaster. Combine one bratty, high-heeled boy band star with a strict, legendary manager who also happens to be a daddy dom. Stir briskly, then stand back and wait for the explosion. A meltdown of epic proportions is only the beginning when Silas James takes over the management duties of dance music sensation Three Trick Pony. The band's superstar status is in question, thanks to lead singer Jet's diva attitude. Silas would love to get Jet alone and give him a hearty spanking. Trouble is, he'd like to do plenty of other kinky things to the femboy as well. Jet can't believe his record company hired the biggest asshole he's ever met to manage the band. Who does the gorgeous hunk think he is, telling the great Jet Fine what to do? No worries, he'll get the jerk in bed, then have him wrapped around his pinky finger in no time. This Silas character might think he's being cool, but Jet can tell when a man is panting after a femboy who can work it in lingerie and high heels. But what if Silas is the one with all the tricks up his sleeve? Diva Pop is the 5th book in the steamy Command and Care MM Daddy romance series and can be read as a standalone. Each book shares a common theme, but no primary characters overlap. If you like femboys with an extra sassy streak, an older distinguished daddy with a firm hand, and enemies to lovers romance, then you'll adore Morticia Knight's scorching tale of burning passions. Trigger on stage, physical assault on page. Anyways, that's the whole layout for you. I believe that the crowd has chosen Chapter 2 for our story time today. I have no idea what happens in it. But good luck, have fun, love y'all, I will see you soon. Chapter 2. Silas signaled to the server at Mousson Frank for another shot of Jameson while he waited for Jerry to show up. The president of Charisma Records was anxious to hear how everything had gone that day. Silas doubted all the whiskey in the world could prepare him for that conversation, but what the hell? It was worth a try. After placing his order, he spotted his longtime buddy entering through the back door that opened from the parking lot. Silas had made sure they were seated in one of the half-moon-shaped burgundy booths, the restaurant's interior an homage to Hollywood's. Oh, getting tricky with the H's there. Spotted his longtime buddy entering through the back door that opened from the parking lot. Silas had made sure they were seated in one of the half-moon-shaped burgundy booths, the restaurant's interior an homage to Hollywood's bygone era. Silas loved the hell out of the place, the locale that dated back to 1919, teeming with Tinseltown ambience. But the table would also afford them a measure of privacy. "How far behind am I?" Jerry grinned as he took a seat. "Should I order a bottle to catch up?" Silas chuckled. "Funny, but maybe you should." He arched his eyebrows at his friend. "You might need it." Jerry groaned as he fell back against the booth. "I had a feeling when you said we should do this in person that it all went to shit today." Silas patted Jerry's hand. "Now hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, it was a rough start, but we both knew it would be." Jerry scrubbed his face with one palm. "I know Tori won't quit, but which of the other two did? Or was it both?" The server approached with Silas's drink, and Jerry ordered a double for himself. As the man walked away, Silas took a quick sip before answering his friend's question. "It's not as terrible as all that," he sighed. "At least not yet." Jerry's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, then enlighten me. Give me hope." Silas held up his glass. "I'll do my best." By the time Silas had given him the condensed version of the day's drama, Jerry had polished off his second drink. Jesus. Jerry rubbed his forehead. Well, you're right. At least 2 of the members haven't quit, and Jet is an unknown quantity. He leaned forward, pushing aside the basket of bread that had arrived after they'd put in their dinner order. What does your gut tell you? Is Jet going to walk? Even though we initially positioned Paul to be the front person, Jet is clearly the star of the show. Jet walk. No. Sachet? Maybe. The stress of the day was beginning to give him a headache, and he probably shouldn't have downed so much booze before he ate. But seriously, I didn't witness today what everyone warned me about. What I saw in Jet was a hurt little boy, not a diva bitch. You're shitting me.
Reverse that, not a bitch diva.
Fine. What I saw in Jet was a hurt little boy, not a bitch diva. You're shitting me, Jerry snorted. I've only ever heard him described as a bitch, a diva, or a bitch diva. Are you sure you're not confusing him with Tori? A grin tugged at one corner of Silas's mouth. Not even close. There was no confusion as to who Jet was. No, that delicious little morsel was a force unto himself, just the type of boy Silas loved taking in hand. Sadly, that wasn't the role he'd been hired to fill, and was one part of his private world Jerry knew nothing about. He intended it to stay that way. No, I'm speaking of Jet. I think perhaps you're viewing him through the lens of Bob and the stories he's told you. Sure, Bob's lens, the choreographer's lens, the stylist's lens, the media's lens. Should I continue? Somehow his friend's barely veiled disdain of Jet was beginning to get under Silas's skin. Jerry didn't understand Jet, didn't recognize what was essentially a cry for help. Not that it was any of Silas's business, of course, but he could at least approach Jet within the context of their business relationship with that knowledge. How about we celebrate the fact that Jet's antics aren't making me walk? He winked in an effort to soften the remark in case his tone had been too salty. Accentuate the positive. Jerry chuckled. True. I need to let you do your job. Their dinner arrived, and the conversation drifted to less stressful topics. They'd known each other for years, had many friends and associates in common in the music industry, so there was plenty to talk about. But as Jerry rambled on, Silas found his thoughts drifting to Jet. He wondered how he was doing, if he was alone, fearful over his future, and perhaps assuming that Silas intended to contribute to his downfall. Silas frowned. Jet's angry exit that day was more about pain than a superiority complex. He was sure of it. Battling his own protective nature and daddy instincts around Jet was going to require iron willpower. But he was up for the challenge in the interest of helping Jet however he could. Silas pinched the bridge of his nose. Once again, he needed to remind himself that he hadn't been hired for his daddy attributes. Silas, you okay? Silas jerked up his head. Oh, man, sorry. I guess I'm distracted by everything that went on earlier. No, that's all right, I understand. Jerry checked his watch. Actually, I should probably take off anyway. I've got an early meeting. After a brief battle over who would pick up the check, with Jerry declaring victory, they said their goodbyes. As Silas waited at the valet stand, he found himself becoming worried about Jet again. He shoved his hands into his suit pants pockets, shifting on his feet as he batted away his concerns. Was he merely responding to the fact that he had followed pants pockets, shifting on his feet as he batted away his concerns? Was he merely responding to the fact that he followed Three Trick Pony's career was a Jet fine fan prior to being asked to step in, or was he primarily focused on Jet's welfare? He gave the valet a tight smile and a $10 bill before climbing into his BMW. If he were being brutally honest, both reasons held true. Silas tapped his fingers on the steering wheel as he cruised down Hollywood Boulevard toward Los Feliz Navidad. If he were being brutally honest, both reasons held true. Silas tapped his fingers on the steering wheel as he cruised down Hollywood Boulevard. If he were being brutally honest, both reasons held true. Silas tapped his fingers on the steering wheel as he cruised down Hollywood Boulevard toward Los Feliz. His place was in Silver Lake, but from what he could remember, Jet's was in the Los Feliz Hills. He tapped some more. A terrible idea was forming in his head, and he needed to suppress it immediately. The tapping turned to gripping. Damn it. Would Jet view him dropping by his private residence as a creeper behavior, or would he view the gesture as
creeper behavior?
Turned to gripping. Damn it. Would Jet view him dropping by his private residence as creeper behavior, or would he view the gesture as reassurance that Jet mattered to the label, that he was worth Silas's time? Giving up on resisting his terrible idea, Silas went with the latter and engaged his Bluetooth virtual assistant. Give me Jet Fine's address, then directions to his home. As soon as he had signed on with the label, Silas had given the band members and the rest of Three Trick Pony's team Give me Jet Fine's address, then directions to his home. As soon as he had signed on with the label, Silas was given the band members and the rest of Three Trick Pony's team info. The system did as he requested, and Silas followed the robotic. Silas was given the band members and the rest of Three Trick Pony's team info. The system did as he requested, and Silas followed the robotic voice's directions. After turning left on North Vermont from Los Feliz Boulevard, he made his way up several winding roads until he reached a long driveway with 2 brick foundations supporting large lantern-style lamps. Much to his dismay, Silas was able to drive right onto the property, since there was no gate denying entry. Anyone could march up to Jet's door and knock, have access to him. Or worse. Silas's heart picked up in pace. This was a reckless boy, a boy who needed someone to take charge. Cyrus angrily tugged on the parking brake before shutting off his engine.
Silas.
I'm sorry?
Silas. You said Cyrus that time.
That sentence? Silas
Yes,
Silas
you said
angrily
Cyrus
tugged.
that time.
Okay. Just clarifying which sentence I did. This was a reckless boy, a boy who needed someone to take charge. Silas angrily tugged on the parking brake before shutting off his engine. Being that he was unaware of Jet's routine, or whether he had his own vehicle, Silas unfolded his long legs from the sports car and climbed out. Even though there wasn't another car in view, Jet could still be home. Silas took the flagstone walkway to the double doors of the mid-century modern home, then rang the lit doorbell. 2 outdoor lamps that matched the ones at the bottom of the driveway brightened the landing, which gave Silas some measure of relief. At least Jet was aware enough to keep the front of his home illuminated. While he waited to find out if Jet was home, Silas rolled his shoulders to release some of the tension he'd been carrying since he arrived at Jet's address. It was amazing that the fireworks at rehearsal had barely rippled the surface of his calm, yet imagining scenarios where Jet could put himself in harm's way had him all jacked up. Silas rang the bell again, leaning with one hand against the doorframe, the other stuffed in his pants pocket again. He chuckled to himself, shaking his head. He'd been without a permanent boy for a while, and now he'd been thrust into Jet's life, a man he already found incredibly attractive. Then the next thing he knows, he's switched into daddy mode. Silas straightened and exhaled. That wouldn't fly. He was 45 years old, and he knew better than to get involved with a client, good intentions or not. After waiting a few more minutes to see if Jet would answer, Silas turned to make his way back to his car, counseling himself that he'd do what needed to be done to help Jet within the purview of his position as manager, but nothing more. Car headlights blinded Silas when he was within 10 feet of his vehicle, and he shielded his eyes with one hand, squinting to see who it was. Sure enough, the man behind the wheel of the car was none other than the elusive Jet. Silas made a low whistle at the sight of the red McLaren. I've never heard that before, McLaren.
But that's what I think it is. And no, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure I've heard McLaren.
I never have, so I'm going to get at least some sort of confirmation. Give me a sec.
And there's a central driving position, just like the McLaren F1. And the similarities to the F1 don't end there.
McLaren. And the wheel of the car was none other than the elusive Jet. Silas made a low whistle at the sight of the red McLaren 540C. At least Jet knew how to choose a fine vehicle. Jet burst out of the front seat, his expression radiating annoyance tinged with anger. He didn't slam the car door, which would have been an unforgivable sin on such a fine vehicle. At least Jet had his act together enough not to make his pricey possessions a victim to his frustration. Jet stopped in front of his car, his arms crossed while leaning on one hip. His ruby-red bottom lip was poked out, and a crease marred the perfect porcelain skin of his forehead. Silas sucked in a deep breath. Jet's attire wasn't helping with Silas's self-imposed hands-off determination. The silver lame spandex booty shorts with sheer black crop top.
Silver lame.
Lame. Jet's attire wasn't helping with Silas's self-imposed hands-off determination. The silver lame spandex booty shorts with sheer black crop top were bad enough, but the black fishnets and low-heeled ankle boots with pink Jesus Christ. I'm really getting into these.
It's like your favorite outfit, isn't it?
Yeah, Jet's attire wasn't helping with Silas's self-imposed hands-off determination. The silver lame spandex booty shorts with sheer black crop top were bad enough, but the black fishnets and low-heeled ankle boots with pink rhinestone accents were erection-inducing. Silas licked his lips, and Jet smirked. "See anything you like?" After giving himself a mental punch to the face, Silas regarded Jet with narrowed eyes. "What I see is that your attitude is just as surly as it was earlier." Silas let out a sigh, then brushed a hand over his head. "But that's not why I dropped by." Jet held up his chin, then sauntered past Silas as if he wasn't worth his time. "Oh, how lovely. You've dropped by in person to fire me." He shot Silas a glare over his shoulder. "What a pal." Silas rolled his eyes, then trailed after Jet. "That's not why I'm here either." Jet paused as he jammed a key into the door lock, the brass object the only other thing hanging from a giant collection of glittery, feathery, and furry objects. Silas frowned at the jumble of items. He sure as hell hoped Jet used the service of a valet. There couldn't possibly be room for the... He sure as hell hoped Jet used the service of a valet. There couldn't possibly be room for the jangling mess in the small Chanel crossbody purse he wore. What if Jet absent-mindedly set them down and someone with ill intent had access to Jet's home or car? Jet tilted his head and pursed his lips. "Why are you all frowny?" And why aren't you telling me why you're really here? Let's try that again. Home or car? Jet tilted his head and pursed his lips. Home or car? Jet tilted his head and pursed his lips. Why are you all frowny? And why aren't you telling me why you're really here? I despise being kept in the dark. Ah, Silas had just been given a clue to part of Jet's personality. Mystery scared him. Not knowing what was happening earlier, not being prepared for the announcement, having to wait all week to discover his fate, that's what the real issue was. I apologize. That wasn't my intention. Which question would you like answered first? Which? Jet furrowed his brow, then gave a little shake of his head. Whatever, doesn't matter. He jiggled one leg as he stared at the ground, then peered up. You're really not here to fire me? Poor baby. No, Jet, I'm not firing you. Well, he gave a quick shrug, then turned the key before pushing the door open. I guess you can come in, then. Silas was set to a remark before pushing the door open. I guess you can come in, then. Silas was set to make a remark about the lackluster invite, then decided it might backfire. He sensed that Jet's nerves were still raw and exposed after the unexpected turn of events that day. Right as he set foot in the already lit marble foyer, the lights went on in the enormous sunken living room. The entire area was carpeted in a pale mauve. Foyer, the lights went on in the enormous sunken living room. The entire area was carpeted in a pale mauve plush carpet, and an idle thought passed through Silas's mind where he wondered whether Jet had picked out the carpeting, or had it come with the house. As far as the furnishings went, they matched the style of the home, although Silas...
Or it had come with the house.
I don't know what you're saying, but I'll do it again. Foyer, the lights went on in the enormous sunken living room. The entire area was carpeted in a pale mauve plush carpet, and an idle thought passed through Silas's mind, where he wondered whether Jet had picked out the carpeting, or it had come with the house. As far as the furnishings went, they matched... whether Jet had picked out the carpeting, or it had come with the house. As far as the furnishings went, they matched the style of the home, although Silas sensed they were more recent versions rather than originals. The simple lines of the two long white couches and the atomic-age chrome and glass coffee table were reminiscent of mid-century design, but not exact. The rest of the decor stayed within the same color palette. Silk throw pillows and glass objects. How do you do that? I'm sorry.
O'Shea Dart. O'Shea Dart.
Aube.
But you can also look it up, just to make sure.
Objet.
O'Shea Dart. I'm not sure if you say the T or not.
It's probably just safe not to, but let's look it up here. I fucking hate the French so bad.
I know.
It is the dumbest language I've ever seen. And I think I've seen them all. They misspelled it. She misspelled it. She spelled
There's
it
no
like...
C.
yeah, she spelled it like objects. And it's O-B-J-E-T.
Objet d'art. Objet d'art.
Objet d'art. Objet d'art, objet d'art, objet d'art. It sounds like something that was chanted in Indiana Jones and... what was the second one? Like Namjada, namjada, namjada. I can't remember the name of the second Indiana Jones movie.
I don't
The
know.
rest of the decor stayed within the same color palette. Silk throw pillows and glass objets d'art were either white, mauve. Mauve. They were really mauve. The rest of the decor stayed within the same color palette. Silk throw pillows and glass object d'art. The rest of the decor stayed within the same color palette. Silk throw pillows and glass objets d'art were either white, mauve, or gray. The occasional touch of black helped define some of the pieces and tied in with the framed black and white art photos of famous ballet dancers. Silas didn't advance any farther into Jet's space. Even though he had already been given entry, taking this peek into Jet's private world seemed too intrusive without a clear invitation. Well, Jet extricated himself from the crossbody purse, then tossed it onto one of the couches. He then supported himself with one hand on the back of the sofa and began toeing off the boots. "Are you coming in, or do you plan to continue lurking at the front door?" Silas frowned. "Watch your tone." He advanced into the living room, but kept his eyes trained on Jet's.
Stop. The living area.
It's the living room. Who the fuck calls it a living area? No one. That's the answer. It's no one. Silas frowned. "Watch your tone." He advanced into the living area, but kept his eyes trained on Jet's. By the time Silas reached the first couch, Jet had dropped his gaze. He might feel compassion for Jet, but he wasn't going to be disrespected. Dude, I don't even like Jet's Pizza very much, but I'm getting so hungry for some Jet's Pizza right about now. He might feel compassion for Jet, but he wasn't going to be disrespected. Jet combed his fingers through his tousled hair. Silas couldn't determine whether it was artfully mussed or had come loose after a vigorous night of... Silas pressed his lips together. He wasn't about to let himself become irrationally jealous over someone he had zero connection with. Jet cleared his throat. "So, something to drink?" The Mr. Charmer act was back in play, with Jet strolling across the room, hips rolling until he reached the built-in bar that only a house that hailed from the 60s could provide. Mirrored tiles with splashes of gold made up the back wall behind the laminated bar top, and the decanters and cocktail glasses screamed madmen. However, as Jet held up one of the glass tumblers, Silas was brought back to the present. Part of the present was... held up one of the glass tumblers, Silas was brought back to the present. Well, it definitely wasn't Last Crusade. Definitely wasn't Crystal Palace. Temple of Doom. That was the one. Held up one of the glass tumblers, Silas was brought back to the present. Part of the present was that the last thing he needed to be doing was downing any more liquor while alone with Jet in his home. "No, thank you." He gave Jet a warm smile, hoping he could help soften the tension between them. "I had a few earlier, so I think I've hit my quota for the night." Jet shrugged, then started pouring a clear liquid from one of the bottles into a martini shaker. If Silas had to guess, he'd put his money on vodka. "Suit yourself. It's still early for me." Jet retrieved a bucket from what Silas assumed was a mini-fridge beneath the bar counter, then plucked a few cubes. "Well, hi, Cheryl." "Suit yourself. It's still early for me." "Suit yourself. It's still early for me." Jet retrieved a bucket from what Silas assumed was a mini-fridge beneath the bar counter, then plucked a few cubes and added them to the shaker. "I've got bottled water, too." Silas shook his head. "No, thanks." Jet capped the stainless steel container, then gave it a hearty shake, one corner of his mouth quirking into a smile. "So, if you're not here to fire me, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Jet poured his mixture into a martini glass, added a bit of olive juice, Then, after putting on quite the show of spearing 2 olives, then slowly sucking the juice off his finger, he took a dainty sip and batted his eyelashes. Had Silas been there as a daddy and a man, he would have appreciated the contrived performance for what it was, an insecure boy who happened to be overly aware of how potent his sexual charms were. Silas grunted to himself. Actually, he did appreciate them, but heaven help him if he were to fall prey to the allure. Being in Jet's appreciate them, but heaven help him if he were to fall prey to the allure. Being in Jet's space suddenly seemed too dangerous, as reckless as Jet allowing himself to be too accessible. I want to make sure you're okay, after everything that went down earlier. Jet's eyes darted away, and he fixed his stare somewhat at the other end of the room. His sip this time was much less...
Fixed his stare somewhere.
Make sure you're okay, after everything that went down earlier. Jet's eyes darted away, and he fixed his stare somewhere at the other end of the room. His sip this time was much less dainty and lasted a lot longer. He set down his glass, his hand fluttering as he randomly fussed with the barware. Well, I'm all right, I suppose. He lifted his gaze. Especially if I'm not fired. For a moment, Silas thought they were about to come to an accord, that Jet was going to lighten up with them, be more open. The moment passed. Jet narrowed his eyes. But that was pretty low, bringing those 2 dancers to the meeting. Whose idea was that? Yours? You could have warned the girl first. Also, I'm still against the addition of new members, but if we are going to have new members, then the original members should choose, not you. Silas nodded slowly. He had been expecting pushbacks. Yeah. Then the original members should choose, not you. Silas nodded slowly. He had been expecting pushback on that issue. Fair enough. But here's the situation. My job as manager means that the hiring... Fair enough. But here's the situation. My job as manager means that the hiring and firing of members is a part of my many responsibilities. It's what the label expects. Silas jerked his head toward the living room. Mind if we sit down? Jet didn't answer, but made his way to the sofa closest to the bar. Silas made a point of taking the other one. He didn't miss Jet's frown. Jet drained the rest of his glass and placed it on the table. You were saying... Silas eased back against the sofa, resting one arm across the top of the piece of furniture and letting his legs fall open a bit. Jet was desperately trying to keep the upper hand with his bratty attitude and sexual posturing, but Silas intended to convey to Jet he wasn't rattled by his behavior. Oh, sure, Silas would pin Jet to the couch in a hot second if he were there for any other reason, but he wasn't. They were manager and client, nothing more. Jet, the last thing I want is for you to feel threatened by these new developments. Be assured that I'm aware of how talented you are, and appreciate your contribution to the band's success. Jet tugged on his hair before twirling a bit around his finger. Weird way of showing it by hiring new guys to steal the spotlight from me. Silas chuckled. I doubt anyone could do that. Jet's eyes widened a tad, and Silas realized he'd shown Jet too much of his hand. He cleared his throat and made an attempt to do some damage control. I want you to understand where I'm coming from, Jet. I have no choice but to deal with the hard facts regarding this industry. One of those facts is that nothing stays the same. Everything changes. If an artist or band doesn't remain fresh and alive, relevant, then they wither away and die. Alive, relevant, then they wither away and die. Silas swallowed hard at the expression of horror on Jet's face. Clearly, he didn't know Jet well enough yet to understand all the nuances that could send him into a downward spiral. Before Silas had the chance to ponder what he could say next to remove the anxiety Jet was feeling, Jet shot to his feet. I see. I'm stale, dead, and irrelevant. Awesome. He whirled around, marching toward the back of the house. We'll just see about that tomorrow at rehearsal. Lock the door on your way out. In an alternate universe, the one where Silas was Jet's daddy and Jet was his boy, he wouldn't tolerate such rudeness. But in the present universe, Silas had to smile. Jet was strong and determined, not one to give up without a fight, regardless of how hurt he was. That was the sign of a truly dedicated artist and man. Would a firm hand and guidance from someone who truly cared about Jet be the ideal situation for him? Absolutely. Too bad Silas couldn't audition for the role.